5. Right now, jury trials in Maryland have been on hold for more than 6 months here during the pandemic. But this morning, courthouses in Maryland are scheduled to welcome back jurors around the state. All the courthouses. We'll see how it goes. WMAR2 News' Mark Roper is outside Baltimore County Circuit Court in Towson. So, Mark, talk about some of the steps that are being taken to keep jurors safe if they get called for jury duty.
Good morning, Christian. Well, before you can even go inside the courthouse, deputies will ask you a series of COVID-19 screening questions. They might take your temperature, but you will have to wear a mask.
These crews are working on a tight deadline to retrofit several Baltimore County courtrooms. Judge Judith ENSOR stresses these rooms need to be ready to safely welcome back judges and juries, plaintiffs and defendants, as well as defense attorneys and prosecutors for the first time in more than 6 months.
Every day there is somebody being held waiting for trial, right? There's a defendant who is being held without bail perhaps and is waiting. That person needs a day in court.
Building a jury for a defendant's trial usually begins here in this room by gathering dozens of prospective jurors together.
We had a jury assembly room. People were shoulder to shoulder. We could call in 150 people. We can't do that anymore. Which
means the first stop to report for jury duty might not be the Baltimore County Circuit Courthouse, but the Maryland State Fairgrounds.
We have looked at the 4-H building, the exhibition hall, and one option for us is to pick our juries off-site.
If that doesn't work, there's also a plan B.
We can fit 35, 40 people in our jury assembly room, socially distanced. We also have 2 large courtrooms. We can pick jurors there.
And after those jurors are picked, they'll have to sit in a courtroom. But some of the courtrooms just aren't large enough to allow for 6 feet of social distancing.
We had to go through, literally measure every courtroom. And we have found roughly two per floor that can realistically be retrofitted.
With safety protocols for COVID-19 in mind, such as 3 rows of jurors instead of 2, plexiglass between rows of jurors spaced 6 feet apart, and reminders to stay socially distant for anyone sitting in on a trial.
In the courtroom where I normally sit, and I think in the others as well, it's every other pew to make sure that there's room. So we're mindful of our obligation to move cases, our obligation to have public trials so that citizens can come in and watch if they like, and to keep people safely distant.
But there are times when staying distant are more difficult than others, which means most jury deliberation rooms like this one are out of commission for now.
We're going to be using some of our courtrooms that aren't retrofitted as areas for the jurors to communicate. Because we've done the measuring in our regular jury rooms, some of them aren't large enough.
Jurors aren't the only ones who need to communicate closely with each other in court. Lawyers need to talk with defendants. Prosecutors need to discuss the case with each other. And attorneys often approach the bench to speak with a judge. But how can they whisper a confidential conversation from a distance?
We're purchasing equipment that should allow people to communicate without having to come up to the bench and be in close quarters. To allow, for instance, a defendant to communicate with his or her attorney without having to be shoulder to shoulder, to have that private discussion.
Crews are putting the finishing touches on prepping this courtroom to hold cases again. But Judge ENSOR says they've been anticipating the day to reopen since courts closed in March.
We have actually done some practice runs in terms of jurors coming into the building so that we would anticipate what problems might arise and be able to take care of them before they happen.
And now another problem the courts are dealing with is how to catch up on a caseload which was on hold for more than 6 months. We're live in Towson. Mark Roper, WMAR2 News.